The Philippines under Spanish rule. Reported by Magaro John Ryan D. and Leo Motion Michael. Objectives 1. Identify the instruments of pacification employed by the Spaniards. 2. Be familiar with the causes of subjugation of Filipinos. 3. Analyze how Spaniards exploited the natives. Instruments of pacification employed by the Spaniards. When Spain settled and established their rule in the Philippines during the 16th century, the country was a collection of scattered barangays whose populations ranged from 30 to 100 families. Through the efforts of Legazpi, and after establishing his strong government in Manila, the lowland Luzon were already occupied, and by the start of 1600 the whole archipelago had been pacified for some islands ruled by the sultans in the south. The Spaniards came to the Philippines with two obvious reasons: first, extension of an empire to enhance their economic interest, and second, the Christianization of the natives. In order to succeed in their aims, they established and implemented the following to get the trust and loyalty of the natives. Pueblo, a larger settlements of natives to make it easier for them to guard under the sound of a bell. They christened those who were obedient to the government. They offered them free housing. They encouraged the local leaders to live in the pueblos. The friars played protectors of the natives against greedy and unruly officers. Adopted the encomienda system, an effective means to watch the natives, but later resulted in dissolution by the end of the 18th century. Spain also established a central government based and located in Intramuros, composed of the following: Governor y Capital General, who held civil and military powers and sometimes ecclesiastical affairs. Alcalde Mayor is in charge for pacified encomienda, and corregidors for unpacified military zones. Gobernadorcillos administer the pueblos and surrounding barrios. Cabeza de barangay assist the gobernadorcillos. The King of Spain instituted several institutions to check the conduct of officials. Royal Audiencia duty is to check the abuses of colonial officials and does justice to the natives. Residencia monitors the actuations of the of an outgoing gobernadorcillo together with a successor. Visita is an inquiry secret by its top colonials. Despite the instruments for pacification, many natives fled to the inner portions or to the hills, where they kept their ancestral beliefs and practices. Some were not attracted to the spectacles of Pueblo because they were forced to follow orders from the Spaniards. Those who were not loyal to the government were christened as Tulisanes, which angered the natives. Causes for subjugation of Filipinos. 1. The military might of the Spaniards. The Spanish conquistadores were mostly experienced soldiers and had superior arms vis-a-vis the natives. The Spanish soldiers wore helmets and body armor as protection. 2. The policy of attraction. One of the most effective strategies employed by the Spaniards in obtaining the support of local chiefs was by exempting them from tributes and polo, a forced labor. They also concluded blood compacts with native rulers. The first blood compact was between Magellan and Colombo in Limasawa in 1521. In the succeeding days, Legazpi also had a blood compact with Arreo of Samar and Catuna and Gala of Bohol in 1565. 3. The method of divide and conquer and rule. This was effective in facilitating the conquest of the natives, who, in the first place, lived in fragmented autonomous units called barangays. It made the Spaniards realize that the Filipinos were disunited. The Spaniards befriended certain groups of Filipinos and used them in subjugating other natives. 4. The crucial role of Christianity. The colonization of the Philippines was viewed as the conquest of the sword and the cross. Catholic missionaries proved to be effective colonizers when they converted first the native chiefs and family members to the Catholic faith. The follow-the-leader syndrome did the rest. The converted natives became fanatics and began to follow blindly the dictates of the Spaniards. This blind obedience became associated with the promise of salvation and of protection from hostile elements. The Filipinos began to practice a syncretic blend of religion that is presently referred to as folk Christianity. The friars allowed the natives to go on with some folk beliefs and practices like sacrificial offering, use of incense, and so on. 5. The lack of unity among the Filipinos. Early settlements and communities lacked contacts and meaningful relationship except for occasional trade exchange. Moreover, barangays were actually autonomous units. Some barangays warred with each other. Differences were noted between the Islamized inhabitants of Mindanao and Sulu, and the animistic people of Luzon and the Visayas. 6. Filipino hospitality. Because of their high sense of hospitality, the Filipinos tried to be friendly with the Spaniards. 7. The Reducción and Plaza Complex. Christianized natives were required to put up their dwellings in a particular area where they could be within hearing distance of the church bells. The church and the plaza became the center of all significant activities of the natives' plaza. From birth to death and beyond death. Those who refused to put their houses in this Spanish-controlled area were referred to as remontados, cimarrones, ladrones, monteses, or tulisanes, and therefore not under the protection and jurisdiction of the Spanish government. The church and the plaza became the stage or theater upon which the natives were magnetized through the fiesta celebration. The Flores de Mayo and Santa Cruzan, the Sinaculo and Moro Moro, the tolling of the church bells and the explosion of firecrackers, instrument of exploitation and control. The encomienda system. Encomendar, which means to entrust or to assign responsibility to a person. In the Philippines, a certain area of land with its inhabitants was assigned to a particular Spaniard who was given the responsibility to collect tribute and to utilize the people in government and church projects. The system became a source of abuse and corruption because the encomendero was free to raise the amount of tribute to be collected from the people. The natives who were not able to pay the tribute were forced to flee to the mountains. These people were called by the Spaniards as remontados or tulisanes. The imposition of taxes. The taxes imposed on the natives were of three kinds: direct taxes that referred to the tribute and the indirect taxes that included the bandala and the custom tax, and the fees covered the not-so-common betel nut, firecrackers, and opium. The Polo y Servicios. The Spanish masters initiated steps to create projects for self-enrichment. One of these was the Polo y Servicios, or forced labor, that began in 1580. Native Indios and mestizos from 16 years old to 60 years old were forced to work for 40 days every year. In 1884, labor was reduced to 15 days. The laborers or police task were made to work in the construction of bridges, roads, churches, and convents, boats, and other projects. Others were sent to the forests to cut trees or to work in mines. The worst cases were those who were sent to Spanish ships to be the rowers, because this meant long periods of being away from their families. The only way out of the polo was the payment of a faya, which was 1.5 real every day for 40 days. The role of a traditional leader. The effective control and administration of the Spanish would not have been achieved if not for the help of the native leaders. The responsibilities assigned to traditional leaders in the implementation of the tribute, polo, and bandala had put them on the side of the Spanish. The use of position for self-enrichment had brought a wide cleavage between the traditional leaders and the people, politically and economically. In short, the datus who governed became pillars of the colonial administration by serving as intermediaries. Government monopolies. The Manila-Acapulco trade, the only sea vessel that linked the Philippines and America. Only the Spanish governor-generals and Spanish traders benefited from this lucrative, as it was a monopoly. The galleon trade. Natives never benefited from this. Instead, they were forced to man the galleons as sailors and rowers and build the galleon trade through forced labor. The Ilocano tobacco monopoly. This deprived the Ilocanos from manufacturing basi or rice wine because of the imposition of the government to plant and grow tobacco. The bandala involves the forced selling of goods including palay, tobacco, and coconut oil. The people only received promissory notes instead of money. The opposition of Moros. The Spanish initiated the conflict by conquering the Philippines and invading Moro territory in an effort to subjugate the region to their rule since the 1500s. When the Spanish conquered the Muslim kingdom of Maynila, a vassal of the Sultanate of Brunei, the Islamic Raja Suleiman resisted the Spanish. Manila then became the capital of the Spanish Philippines after the conquest, with the Spanish forcibly converting people to Catholicism. The Spanish were prepared to conquer Mindanao and the Moluccas after establishing forts in 1635, but the Chinese threatened the Spanish with invasion, forcing them to pull back to defend Manila. They failed on occupying Mindanao and Sulu. The successful avoidance of ethnic communities. Some groups of people fled to the upland areas to avoid Spanish colonization. Others followed later because of Spanish exploitation and injustices. Through time, the number of people who fled to the mountains increased and were not subjected to Spanish influences. Thus they were able to preserve their culture. Because the number of those who were put under the colonial control was greater than those who fled and remained free, the latter became known as the cultural minority. The end.
Salamat sa pakikinig at panonood kahit bulol ako. Pasensya ka na, God bless. Kung wala nang tanong, maraming salamat. Kung meron naman ay i-google mo na lang. Pasensya ka na, God bless.